Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime, and this video is going to be my review for the Legend of Korra video game that was just recently released. I'm going to be reviewing the Xbox 360 version, though it's the exact same as the every other version basically. I don't think there's much of a difference between the two different ones, but yeah. Overall, I think this is a pretty good game. I think a lot of the reviews out there already from the big game sites like IGN, I think they gave it like a 4.3. GameSpot gave it like a 3 out of 10. Those reviews, I don't really agree with a lot of what they say about the game, because I feel like those reviews are reviewing this as like a full $60 physical release, when in fact this game is a $15 downloadable title. On Xbox, this game is considered an arcade game. So, you have to review it with that in mind. This game was done with, I assume, the budget of a downloadable game rather than a full game. By all accounts, it had a fairly short development time from being announced to actually being released. And for what it is, I think it's pretty good. As a Korra fan, a big Korra fan, obviously that's what my whole channel is basically based around, I really enjoyed this game. First time getting to really play as Korra in a video game that wasn't a Nick.com game or anything like that. I think it was a really enjoyable experience. As a big video game player, I play a bunch of different types of games. I quite enjoyed it just in terms of a game. Um, yeah, it doesn't really make me that interested to go and maybe play Bayonetta or something like that, because I'm not really, I don't really, I'm not really interested in getting into that kind of the story or whatever, that world. But this combo system, this kind of third-person beat-em-up style of a game, I actually quite like this. And if they made another Korra game that was more fully featured, I'd really enjoy it. It's not perfect. There are little things that are kind of like problematic with the game, and you can sort of tell that it did have a fairly short development cycle. But on the whole, I think it's worth the $15. I think most Korra fans who play this game won't be disappointed. And video game fans, maybe like if you're expecting more this to be more than the $15 game, maybe you'll be disappointed. But I think it's pretty good. If I was to put a number score for this game, I'd probably give it an 7.5 or 8 out of 10, because I really do think it's good. It's just held back a little bit by some stuff I'll talk about. So let me talk a bit more about the specifics of this game. Warning, I'm going to leave the spoilers on the story until basically after my review. So I'm basically going to give my full thoughts on the game, non-spoiler wise, and then after I give my kind of final closing comments, I'll talk about the spoiler story. So that way you just don't have to watch that section at the end, and you can avoid spoilers. But yeah, the main gameplay, obviously, there's three different types of gameplay in this game. The first one is the third-person beat 'em up combat style game that Platinum Games is known for. There's some levels, or some sections of levels, where you're on Naga and you're basically running through the streets of like Republic City or the South Pole, and it's kind of this endless runner style. I think it's like a temple run style game where you have three tracks to run across, and you can just kind of switch between them, going left and right. You jump over obstacles, and you have to get to an end of a course without crashing into anything. So that's pretty cool. And then there's also a pro bending game as well, which obviously you play as a fire ferret, as Korra, and it uses much of the same mechanics that the kind of main combat system does, just more limited within the pro bending kind of rules and stuff like that. And there's some slight changes, but other than that, it's pretty fun. So there's actually a surprisingly good variety in gameplay in this game, in my opinion. As I said, this is a downloadable title. They didn't have to do the Naga sections or the pro bending stuff, but they did, and it adds a lot of variety to the game in my mind. Because yes, if it was just 8 levels of nothing but combo, taking out equalized spirits and stuff like that, it might get a little bit kind of tiring after a while, playing just level after level. But these extra kind of things break it up enough that you kind of enjoy when you return to the combat and stuff like that. So it does a pretty good job in that sense. For more details, I suppose, on the actual combat system, this is probably the first time in a very long time that I've actually played a kind of this style of a third-person beat 'em up style game. I think the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2003 game, the original one that came out, was probably the last time I played a game like this. But I really enjoyed this. It takes a bit of getting used to if you're not used to that style of game. It definitely took me a while. I first played through the game on casual mode, which is the basically like beginner mode, and I struggled a little bit at the start to get used to it. I really did, just because I wasn't used to playing this style of a game. That, and because of the way the story goes, you obviously start off the game without your bending. You lose it at the start as part of the story. So for the first level or two, you basically have to do all hand-to-hand combat, which is a little bit difficult because as an Avatar fan, like I expected going into this game to be able to just basically hang back and basically throw bending at people, shoot fire at them and stuff like that. But that's not really the case. For the first few missions, you have to get up close and personal with the hand-to-hand combat until you unlock the bending. And then even when you unlock all four bending, all the four different elements, only some of them are ranged. Like firebending is up close, earthbending's fairly up close, but there's a kind of wide area of effect. Waterbending is probably the most distance based in terms of like staying back, and then airbending is kind of like a nice balance in that it can hit people from far away, but you can also get up close if you want. Yeah, the main kind of control scheme for this part of the game is that on Xbox, square is light attack, Y is heavy attack, B is kind of your finishing move that only activates when you like stun your opponent or have them down to very low health. A is jump. Right trigger is dodge. Basically, you press that and do a direction, and you kind of flip out of the way, and you can dodge attacks like that. And then left trigger is guard/counter. So if someone attacks you and you just tap it, you can counter their move if you time it correctly. And if you just hold it down, you kind of get into a defensive mode and don't take as much damage. And then the right bumpers switch between your elements, so that's pretty cool. And then pressing both of them together activates the avatar state once you activate it. That's the way it works. Basically, all the combos in the game are a combination of square and Y, X and Y. So there's square, square, Y, square, 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 Y, and so on like that. Each element has about 6 or 7 combos for each, but what makes it more interesting than that, like just 6 or 7 for each element, is that there's this other kind of ability in the game, and that is the ability to basically charge your chi, which obviously makes sense in the context of the universe, and that's just the game version of it, that you basically hold down one of the attack buttons, and once you max out your level for each element, you basically have 3 levels of charged chi. So you can hold it down for like a second and charge the first level, and your attacks do a little bit more damage. You charge it down a little bit more to get the second level, your attacks do even more damage, and then the third level, your attacks are at their most powerful, basically. And what I really like about this is it's not just that the attacks do more damage, the animations for the attacks also get bigger and more elaborate. The bending gets even more intense. So best example of this would probably be the airbending combo, where I think it's 4 squares. You just do square, 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 square. You do this sequence of flips where you constantly like shoot jets of air at people, and you kind of create a gust of wind that kind of damages people around you. But on the third level of charged chi, the most powerful version of this is it's the exact same like sequence of moves, and that Korra does the same flips and like actual motions, but the bending that comes out is even more powerful. So it's huge gusts of wind that you fire at people, and then instead of just like these gusts of winds damaging people around you, you get these like 3 or 4 whole cyclones just swirling around the stage that damage a bunch of enemies. It's a really cool attack. With earthbending, I think it's just your 3 square attack, square, 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 is just you kind of stomp forward 3 times and you create pillars out of the ground, and they damage the enemies. But on the third level of charged chi, what you do is each stomp lifts a huge basically this huge chunk of rock out of the ground, and it levitates in the air while you're doing your attack. So one stomp gets the first one up, the second stomp gets the second one up, and then the third hit is you kind of jump in the air and kick the two rocks at someone. So it's a really cool extra attack, and it works like this all over the place. So again, that's an extra layer they went. They didn't have to make the attacks look even more powerful. They could have just had them do more damage, but they did that. It was cool. Each element has 10 levels. Basically, you go up. The more enemies you kill, basically using an element, the more you level it up. And this unlocks new combos. It increases your chi meter, as I said. It increases some of the level ups increase your health. And so by the end of the game, you have access to every combo. Your health is at its maximum. You have fully charged chi for all elements and stuff like that. And so the progression in the game, it works that you go from hand-to-hand combat for the first mission or two. You then unlock water, earth, fire, air. Then you unlock spirit bending when you go to the spirit world to take out the spirits. And then you unlock avatar state, which is your kind of super mode, basically. Spirit bending is actually really cool because the way it works is that in earlier levels you fight chi blockers and triads. They're the enemies in the game, and when you get their health down to zero, they basically like normal enemies in the game, they just disappear. But with the spirits, when you get their health down to zero, they stay there, but they kind of just stand there dazed for ages, and they kind of glow yellow a little bit. And what you have to do is press B once you've unlocked spirit bending, and Korra does the whole light spirit bending thing where you get the double helix thing around them and turn them to light, spirit bend them. So that's really cool. That's actually a feature, that it isn't just you go into the spirit world and you defeat enemies in the same way. It adds an extra kind of button press to it, and that technically it's the finishing move for spirits, while with enemies when you daze them you do a super move. But it's still pretty cool. Yeah, in terms of variety in the combat, it's actually quite cool because take the chi blockers for example. The ones in green are just chi blockers. They come up to you, they try and take you on hand-to-hand combat, and I think if they get behind you, it activates this kind of chi block kind of quick time event where if you don't press the button presses to escape it, they actually kind of block your bending and you can't do it anymore. Then there's blue guys who throw bolos at you and they kind of wrap you up and then they come over and beat you up, and you have to wiggle the analog stick to get out of it. And then there's red guys with chi blocker electric gloves, and they shoot obviously lightning at you and try and electrocute you. So that's pretty cool. And then you fight Viper, Two-Toed Ping, and the Earthbender guy that Korra fights in episode 1. They're also part of the enemies. It brings up one of my issues with the game in that I understand the need to recolor the chi blockers and the random enemies, like different colored mecha tanks and stuff like that, just to, okay, this is what this mecha tank does, this is what this chi blocker does. But what they do with the triads is that they only have those models for those three characters. Viper, the waterbender guy with the hat, Two-Toed Ping, obviously, the firebender guy, and then the earthbender guy who's unnamed. Those three character models that we know from the show really well, they're all they have. And what they do is they recolor it once in the game, and basically it just means there are only 6 different types of triads, but they're the exact same character, just recolored. You have Viper with the blonde hair or something like that, and he's wearing blue clothing instead of grey or something like that. I would have it really shows that for this game the only new characters that they actually designed were Houndoon and the final boss version of Houndoon. There's no new characters in the game, and I don't know if it would have been a huge effort to just design 3 random triad guys, but it's one of the minor problems I have with the game. It just comes across as a little bit lazy, that it's just a recolor for some of the known characters. I don't have a problem with the chi blockers just wearing different colored clothing to differentiate them as different, but when you literally have that unique character named Viper and just change his colours and act like he's a different character and don't name him, that's when I have a little bit of a problem. But yeah, it worked pretty cool. Obviously you can the counter ability works for a lot of this stuff. If they throw a bolo at you and you counter it, you throw it back at them. You can't counter lightning, you just have to avoid it. And then when you fight benders, if you get up really close, it activates this other quick time event where they try and just attack you physically, they try and punch you, and you have to like get out of that. It's pretty cool. Um, Boss encounters mainly consist of mecha tanks over the course of the game, and they're pretty cool because they are pretty tough. Like they have two whole health bars, and you have to really charge up your attacks to do a lot of damage, or you're kind of relying on the kind of quick time event and countering some of their moves, which is pretty risky. So the boss encounters are pretty tough. Sometimes the mecha tank boss encounters can be a little bit frustrating. In that, I'd say one of the hardest bosses in the game is probably the second time you encounter a mecha tank, because the first one they make it very clear that Jinora basically appears. Jinora is your kind of helper in the game. She appears in spirit form and kind of gives you advice. She comes up and says, okay, when it charges at you, try and block it and counter attack, and that's how you defeat it basically. But the second one doesn't really do that. This is the magnet version of the mecha tank, and there's no obvious way where like it tells you what way to counter it. And because you attacked the first mecha tank mainly by countering it, you really think that that's the way you have to take on this second one, when in fact you really just have to like take it on like a normal enemy and just start going at it with bending. But it's as pretty cool. And with regards to some of the unlocks, some of the combos in the bendings you unlock just by leveling up the element, and you just say, you unlock this combo, square, 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 5 times. But some of them you actually unlock the ability to purchase a combo or move from Iroh's Spirit Store, which is basically the place where you buy healing items and stuff like that from. And that's a cool little reference, just that Iroh's, the currency in the game is spirit energy, and you use that to buy from the spirit shop. And some of the items are pretty cool. Like you can buy Iroh's tea, and it gives you like a random special effect that like increases your power. There's this kind of there's Katara healing water, which basically revives you if you're killed, and then there's just like healing stuff, and it's pretty cool. With regards to the Naga stuff, the other kind of gameplay sections, mainly it consists of it's an endless runner. Like you don't choose to go forward, the Naga just runs forward, and you control Naga in between like 3 lanes of traffic in a way, and you just dodge between stuff. You can jump over stuff. The first level is a Republic City level, so you're dodging automobiles on the road and various like pits in front of you, jumping over them and sliding under kind of tight gaps. And eventually you unlock bending on Naga. So the way it works is that earth bending is your double jump. Fire bending just destroys stuff in front of you. Water bending creates a shield to block an incoming attack, or if you bump into something, it basically saves your life. And airbending is a speed boost. So it's pretty fun. Like there's actually a surprisingly good like amount of stuff to do on Naga. It's not just left right jump. Pro bending, as I said, it's like a simplistic version of the main combat in that you have light attack, heavy attack. You don't really have any combos though, and then you can dodge, so you can do your flips to dodge, and you can counter as well. And the main thing is just like your opponents have a health bar. When it goes down to nothing and then you hit them again, they're launched back a zone. And so when you get the whole team back a zone, you go forward. The basic pro bending rules, and it works pretty nicely, and especially on some of the harder difficulty modes, because it does have its own mode in the menu. When you finish the game the first time, you unlock a pro bending mode where you just do nothing but pro bending. It's pretty fun. Especially on some of the harder modes, it can be pretty tricky just to actually win, and it's very strategic as well, because you may like push your opponent back a zone, but when you push your opponent back a zone, their health basically resets. Like if you launched someone back a zone, their health is at 0. It then resets. But if you've only like half damaged them, their health remains, and your health doesn't reset as you're like going forward attacking. So you could have your opponent in the final sector, just about to defeat them, but they will all have full health, and your whole team will be on really low health because you've had to continue with the same health bar for like 3 kind of sections of pushing your opponent back, and then their attacks are also more powerful the further back they are, so there's a kind of comeback mechanic in there. It's pretty strategic actually. I quite like it, and yes, there's a complaint like, imagine there was multiplayer on this. This game I think would be incredibly strategic and fun if there was multiplayer, and that's a clear kind of way I can say like, okay, I would really like it if they added that to it in a future game, like if they had a full release. That would be really cool. Let me talk about the graphics actually of the game. That's another thing. really cool. Like I think the cell shaded animation, the graphic style for this game, is the perfect way to implement Avatar slash Korra, its animation style in a video game, because it captures the feel of the universe and the animation style while also being 3D and looking really cool. Like the animations that they have for like Korra work really well, and then just like getting to explore all these places that you've seen in Korra is such a really cool experience because they modeled the world pretty well. Like, admittedly, the areas are very simplistic. Like, literally every level in the game is basically a sequence of fighting arenas, which is either a square or a circle, connected by like a path, basically a straight path, and then there's a few places there. There's a few like little areas you can run off to, and there's like an item here or there. You can knock down a wall that looks like it's crumbling and go to a new area, but primarily it's just area, 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 and that makes sense. Um, but along these paths and areas, like in Republic City, you can see all these awesome kind of various kind of like apartment blocks, shops, shop stalls, automobiles all over the place, trucks. It really feels like the Avatar world. They kind of explain why there's not many people running around and that a large part of the city has been like abandoned and stuff like that. And then you're in the spirit world, so obviously there's not many people there. You're in the South Pole, so obviously there's not many people around. So they do a good job of explaining why there's not a ton of people around, and that like as part of the story, the cheap blockers have taken over this part of the city and so on. But yeah, some of the really highlight moments in terms of visuals are definitely when you get to the South Pole level, and the aim of this level is to get to the southern spirit portal and go into the spirit world to face your enemy Hundun. And when you get there, off in the distance, you can just see this light of the spirit portal up in the air, and it just acts as this really cool background kind of marker. Like I have to get there. I have all these characters to fight through, and it's just a really cool experience. And then the next level, you go into the spirit world, and what's off in the distance, the Tree of Time, and it's just this really amazing visual because inside the spirit world, you have all the awesome kind of spirit lighting. The colors are very different, and you have dark spirits everywhere. It looks amazing. I really like it. So you can tell they've done a good job at modeling this universe, and that the creators of this game really like this universe. It's pretty cool. And then the actual cutscene animations, done by Titmouse Animation, very nicely done animation. Obviously they're very short little sequences, like they're about a minute, maybe 90 seconds at most, and you get one at like the start of a level, at the end of a level, and maybe at like an important point in the middle of a level. So there's not that many of them, but they're very nicely animated and stuff like that. So animation's super solid on them. What else is there to mention? Non-spoiler on the story. Before I get into it in kind of full detail, I think the story is fine for what it is. Like again, keep in mind a $15 game over the course of 8 levels. The campaign, just FYI, is it took me about probably 5-6 hours on casual mode to do it, and that's with a lot of exploring and stuff like that. When I played it on normal mode, it probably took a little bit less than that, but it was still fun. Like there's a lot of value in this game. You get a good probably 10 hours overall out of it if you try and do most of the stuff. But yeah, the spoilers, story, it's fine for what it is. As I said, it's the one thing you need to realize about this game is that it's basically Korra's like one of the only characters in it. It's Korra fighting Hundun. That's about it. Jinora, as I said, is your kind of helper character and comes in and gives you tips. That's your kind of like Zelda fairy type character who just comes in to help you out. Mako and Bolin are there at the start, but they're not really part of the main mission, and that's kind of sort of explained away in a kind of little storyline towards the end. But yeah, it's very much a personal Korra story, and really it takes place over the course of like a few days. Like it's literally like Korra loses her bending to the villain. She investigates the villain by going through these levels, decides she needs to go to the spirit portal, goes into the spirit portal, fights the villain, boom, over. Simple, to the point, fine. There are some intricacies towards the end that are really interesting, though I don't feel the actual writing of this game it needed more detail, I suppose that's what I want to say here. It needed to explain more about what was going on, because I was left a little bit confused. Because there's a simple way to take this story, and it's just like, as I just said there. She does this, defeats the villain, it's all over. But the villain has some complexities to him that they kind of present to you, but they kind of don't. They give you some, like, there's some facts presented by the villain that just are not explained. And if they were explained, this would be a pretty interesting story. But I'll talk about that more later on. The story for what it is fine, I think, for what it is, like, as I said. Any other things to mention? Oh, collectible system, that's probably one of the last things I need to mention. As I said, there's various little kind of areas, like, off the main path of the level, where you can find these treasure chests. And in them, you use bending to open them up, and you get these various items. They don't do anything now, they're just basically collectibles. They go into this little menu and unlock as collectibles. But there's such amazing references to Avatar and Korra. Like, the first item in this game, I think, tells you the whole story about this. The first item that I got, and it's completely random what item you get, their items are ranked from C, which is the lowest rank, to B, A, and an S is the highest rank. I got a C item as my first one, so I wasn't expecting much. And so the item, all it is a cabbage. It's this cabbage with a picture of a woman's face on it. And to many people, that may seem like nothing. But to me, as a huge Avatar fan, this was the most amazing reference I have ever seen in a video game. Because this is the cabbage that Katara is holding in the episode from Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Puppet Master. This is her grandmother's face cabbage, basically. And this is a reference in this game. And I was amazed by that. And then the other ones are like you can get a item that's nooked. That's the Nook Tuk movie posters. There's Amon posters, Twee and Law fish, fried fish, and all this other sort of stuff like radio, gramophone. Really cool references. And then like even some of the achievements have some cool names. Use the Avatar state 10 times and you get the achievement. This isn't a booster rocket. You get all the items or something like that, and it's called Bizbender. Like, there's some cool references. They really understand the universe, whoever is making this game. And as I said, if they had a bigger budget, I think this would be an awesome game. Like, amazing, like, really good. And I hope they do make another one, because I can see some very clear ways that this game could be improved upon. And one of which would be just the whole idea that instead of just playing as Korra, maybe each level has like a character select screen. So like the first level, say you have to play as Korra, as like the tutorial mode, getting used to all of the elements and stuff like that. But second level, you have a choice to play the level as Mako or Bolin. I think that would be a really cool idea, because you go from playing as like this four-bender, a character who has all four elements, and the Avatar state, to then having to choose between, do we want to play through this game as this level as a firebender or an earthbender? And then instead of switching between the elements, you basically switch between Mako and Bolin's special skills. So Mako has lightning bending, Bolin has lava bending, and that would be really cool. And then like Asami could have like some non-bender stealth sequences, maybe with the Equalist glove. Tenzin could have a airbending focus level, and what they could do is just like, say like the difference between Mako and Korra's firebending is just the moves are executed like differently. Like Mako uses a different sequence of moves than Korra does because they're different fighters. There's some clear places I think this game could improve upon, but from what it is, I think it's pretty cool. Final thing to say is that some of the unlockables in the game are basically just costumes for Korra. So you start off with Korra in her Book 2 outfit. You finish the game on any mode, you unlock Korra in her Book 1 outfit. There's a code to unlock Cosmic Blue Korra, which is from the end of Book 2. There's a code to unlock Chi Blocker outfit Korra. And then I think that the one I haven't unlocked yet, which is for Extreme Mode, completing the game in Extreme Mode, is I think it's Book 2 Korra in her parka, or Book 1 Korra in her parka, I'm not really sure. But yeah, they're pretty cool. If you look in the description or the comment section, I'll have the three codes that are actually out for this game right now. One of them's to unlock, as I said, that blue Korra costume. One of them's to unlock the Chi Blocker costume, and one of them's to unlock a talisman in the Iroh shop. So I'll have the codes in the description of the comments. Definitely look for that. But yeah, that's the main review. I'll talk about the story in a moment. Final thoughts are just that, like, if you're a Korra fan looking to play a Korra game, I think this is well worth the $15 that it is. It's cheap, it's downloadable, you don't have to go out to a shop to get it. You can just go onto your console's marketplace and get it. It's for Xbox 360, Xbox One, PS3, PS4, and Steam. If you're a video game fan, I still think it's a pretty good beat 'em up game. Maybe if you're a huge Platinum Games fan, this might be one of their lower quality games, but for me who hasn't played any of those, I think it's pretty good. Now for the story. I'm going to spoil the story now, so if you don't want the spoilers on the whole story of this game, please turn off the video. I'm not going to talk about anything else apart from the spoilers. So, the game's story is effectively, as I said earlier on in the video, it's effectively, the game starts off with, I'll just give a description of what the story basically is, and then I'll talk about it in more specifics. So, the game starts off with Korra and the Fire Ferrets, Mako and Bolin. They attend this pro-bending charity tournament to basically raise money to rebuild Republic City in the aftermath of Korra's fight with Unavati that saved the world. So the Fire Ferrets face off against one of the teams. Mako and Bolin are quickly eliminated because they're kind of arguing over who's better now at pro-bending, and Korra's left to win the match herself. She does, and kind of wins the first match of the tournament for the Fire Ferrets. And I think they basically established that the next match of the tournament is going to be the following week. And then on the way home from the tournament, Korra's all happy, she's just saved the world, she's just saved the match for the Fire Ferrets. And then she sees these two triads, Viper and Two-Toed Ping, down an alleyway, talking to this old man who is Hoondoon, but she doesn't know who he is yet, obviously. She goes down there thinking that these two triads are harassing this old man. They run off, and he disappears into nothing, like a spirit. And she's left confused, kind of. Then out of nowhere, these kind of darts stick into her all over the place and basically kind of knock her out. She then wakes up in this kind of hideout area with the triads, chi blockers, and Hoondoon around her. She can't bend, and she feels as if it's not just her chi has been blocked, but that her chi has been taken. And then Hoondoon kind of quickly orders them, complete the extraction. She's waking up. Korra then still manages to escape by basically using her hand-to-hand combat skills, and that's where the first level takes place. It's basically escaping the chi blockers. The game progresses from there, and that's you basically go through kind of I think after this you go to Air Temple Island, and you find that Tenzin and Co are just on their way home basically from visiting Katara, so they're not on Air Temple Island, and you go there. Along the way, Jinora appears to you via spirit projection and tells you that this is the perfect time to reawaken your waterbending. So you collect these items and unlock your waterbending. That's cool, and the idea is that over the course of the game, Korra gradually gains her chi back and gradually unlocks the elements. So that's a pretty cool explanation, and she finds these chi blockers and triads working together again on Air Temple Island. She defeats them, she defeats Viper, Two-Toed Ping, and the Earthbender guy. And that's fine. She then goes back into Republic City and finds that this whole section of the city that is basically was wrecked by her fight with Unavatu has been taken over by the chi blockers. And she goes through, fights them. It ends with a fight with a mecha tank. You beat that. And eventually Jinora appears to you again and kind of goes something fishy's going on here. I think there's something spiritual. Korra agrees, and you return to the South Pole. I think you take one of Varric's shipping ships, and you return to the South Pole. The whole gist of this mission is that you head to the Spirit Portal. And basically, again, you fight chi blockers, you fight triads, and you go into the Spirit Portal, which is pretty cool. What actually happens there... Oh, what actually happens is, I think at this point the spirits appear. Spirits appear and you have to fight them. At this point you've unlocked all of the bending again, so that's cool, but not yet spirit bending. The spirits begin to attack you, but you can't defeat them because you don't have spirit bending. You're knocked into the Spirit Portal, and then the next mission takes place in there. Your aim is basically just to get to the Tree of Time, which you gradually learn spirit bending and can take out the spirits. And you go through the level, and you eventually encounter Hoondoon at the end. And you fight this giant spirit, and then the next mission is basically takes place at the Tree of Time. And all it consists of is basically you constantly running at Hoondoon to try and attack him. but he uses his spirit chaos magic to basically create these illusions, which is basically what the level takes place in. Like, one time you visualize yourself back on Air Temple Island, but you're fighting spirits there as well, and then there's other people as well. Then you visualize yourself in a pro bending arena, fighting against a pro bending spirit team, and stuff like that. Eventually, Korra breaks through all of this and finally gets her basically one-on-one confrontation with Hundun, which is what the final level is. Hundun basically, this area beside the Tree of Time, he uses his powers to raise it up off the ground and levitate it in the air. And it's this really cool area, just this rock floating in the air above the Tree of Time, effectively. And yeah, you take out a bunch of spirits, and then you're left finally to confront Hundun. What happens here is probably the most confusing, but also most interesting part of the game. Hundun, throughout this thing, has been explaining what happened. The reason he has control over the chi blockers is because they've still existed since Amon was defeated. But he came in and basically gave them a new leader. He basically describes that, all they had to do was say that I was all for equality and they followed me. And then with regards to the triads, all I had to do was pay them and they'd do anything I wanted. So that explains why he has the two of them on his side, and then his spirit powers control spirits. He then explains to Korra that the reason he's doing all of this is because he wants to bring chaos back into the world. He says he's the master of the chaotic attack, and he's angry at Korra because 1,000 years ago he fought the Avatar that existed 1,000 years ago, and this Avatar defeated him and caused him to meditate in retreat to the spirit world, leaving his physical body behind and having to basically being trapped in the spirit world until Korra freed him by opening the spirit portals at the end of book 2. That makes sense so far. He then explains that his plan is that what he really wants to do is basically return to the physical world with a physical body and basically reclaim all that he once was. He says that he was a king in the past, and he's super rich. That's how he has enough money to afford to create this army of chi blockers and triads. Then, when you actually go to fight him, this is the weirdest part of the game in my mind. He says, as you begin the fight, he says, Korra, there's a bit of trash talk, and Korra says, I'm going to keep you in here for another 1,000 years or else I'll destroy you, or something like that. Not the exact line, but something like that. Just, it's trash talk. Hundun then basically says, I think it's time you met the person that your previous life wounded in our fight. My brother. And then Hundun is obviously this big hunchbacked guy. He's a small old man, but he's got a huge hunchback. He takes his cloak off, and basically it's revealed that something like his brother is literally attached to his back. They're attached back to back. They both have legs, they both have arms, they both have a head. They're just literally fused back to back. And his brother looks a lot like Hundun, but it looks like he's been injured or something like that, and stitched back together or something like that. And so the final boss of the game is Hundun and his unnamed brother fighting back to back, and they're using their spirit powers. And the obvious explanation for why he has spirit powers despite being a human is because Mike O'Brien has said that even about Iroh, who's done the same thing, left his body behind. A human who meditates into the spirit world and stays there for long enough eventually becomes a spirit, and over the course of time will gain spirit powers, and that explains what he has here. He uses the spirit powers to fight you in the final fight. Fight goes on. You do pretty well, taking him on. You now have access to the Avatar state. He eventually gets really angry and starts to beat you up. As you're tossed into the air, you go into the Avatar state, and this begins the final sequence. And you just basically do this. The music comes on. Avatar music comes on. Epic. You just start beating him up in the Avatar state. And you finish him off with this giant boulder that you lift above him and slam him into the ground with, and then you spirit bend him to finish him off. And that's the end of Hundun. Korra returns to the kind of normal world, and she's like, that's another reason to doubt my leaving the spirit portals open. She then finishes the charity tournament by facing the wolf bats, who are revealed to she has given them their bending back. Tano's there. he says a few lines as you do the pro bending fight. You win the fight, the whole fire fair to win the tournament, and they've raised a lot of money to rebuild the city, and that's how the game ends. So overall, it's a fairly solid story. The problem, in regards to some analysis, my problem with the story is that the brother reveal comes out of nowhere. It's not explained. His whole technique. One bit of the story I forgot to mention is that he wants to defeat Korra, and he basically explains how he was able to take her chi away rather than just block it. In that, he says this word that's really hard to make out because of the sound effects going on when he says it. But like, he extracted the chi from a place called her Bansham, or he uses a technique called Bansham. I don't know if that's how it's pronouncing it correctly, but he used it to extract her chi, and his plan was, I think, to basically take her body and make it his own, so he could return to the spirit world. So that was that. The brother reveal comes out of nowhere in my mind, because he's not mentioned at all in the few times that Hundun mentions the fight with the previous avatar. So this, in my mind, basically means that the fight between this avatar 1,000 years ago and Hundun now also includes his brother. So Hundun is his brother versus the avatar. And I assume what happens was that the avatar went into the avatar state or something like that, more or less fatally wounded Hundun's brother, and this caused Hundun to retreat. And I assume, this is complete conjecture, I assume what happened was that he said he meditated into the spirit world. I assume he tried to basically either make his brother do the same or try to drag his brother's spirit with him, but it went wrong, or it's something you're not meant to do, and they ended up like their spirits fused together or something like that. But because his brother was on the verge of dying, that's why he's the one in control and his brother's just this kind of monster. Something like that. And that might explain it, and then he helps to maybe with the avatar's body to like restore both of them or something like that. Either way, there's interesting stuff here. My problem, in addition to the brother thing coming out of nowhere, is just that they needed to show you what happened in this fight. They needed to reveal who this avatar was 1,000 years ago, name him or her, show a cutscene with this fight, show what happened to his brother, and show the sequence of events that led to the two of them becoming this monster that you fight at the end. That needed to happen. As the game is right now, it's confusing when you get to the end. As I said, you can just look at it as if it's just like, okay, this is the game, it's just fight a villain, defeat a villain, that's it. But in terms of the complexities that are there in the story, as I said, I'm basing this on stuff presented in the story, there's not enough info there to really understand fully what happened. And I want to. It's just a level of like, Mike and Brian assisted on this story, and I know they have a habit of like, they don't like to just reveal information for the sake of revealing information, but I really think they should have just named the avatar, shown this avatar, because they probably have already designed this avatar 1,000 years ago, because you just go back as far as the avatars that we know, and you're already at about 500, 600 years, because let's do the math right now. 182 years ago, from the time that this game takes place, this is obviously between book 2 and 3, that's the time where you've obviously, that covers Aang and Korra's time as the avatar. So 182 years ago was the day basically Roku died. Roku lived to be 70 years old. So that's, you go back then 252 years from present day book 2. Kyoshi lived to be 230 years old on her own. So that's 482 years just for like 4 avatars. Then you go to Kuruk. I think died fairly young, because I think it was explained that he only lived to be about 35 or 40 because he spent most of his life after Umi was taken searching for her and kind of ran himself into the ground. So that basically... sorry about that, my camera just cut out. Okay, so I think Kuruk lived only to be about 35 years old. So that basically brings up the numbers to about 515 or something like that. Again, doing this right in my head right now, I haven't wrote it down. Yang Chen, we don't know how old she lived to be. Let's estimate around 70 or something like that, maybe a little bit older, like 80 or something like that. You're nearly at 600 already with just the avatars that we already know. go back a couple more, and again, the Hall of Avatars that we saw in Book 2 Spirits, we probably know what this avatar looks like, and it literally is just a matter of a name. Like, I would have liked the name just on this avatar, just to give the story something more, like put a personal touch on who was the avatar that wronged this, that defeated this person, Hundun. And it would also, in showing that, give us a bit more kind of, not sympathy, but give the villain's motivations a kind of face, a voice, rather than him just saying, I was defeated by the Avatar 1,000 years ago and now I'm back for revenge. The story is fine, but I just wanted more detail. And I think I think there's probably detail in whatever the concept was. In Tim Hedrick's head, in his script or something like that, there's probably the full detail needed to fully explain this game, but what's in here isn't quite good enough in my mind. I like some of the details. Like, it does explain what's up with the Chi Walkers. It does explain a little bit about the in between book 2 and 3. What happened and stuff like that. He explains where the city got the money from to rebuild the city. It also shows that the Mako Bolin and the Firefighter were reformed and kind of did win a tournament. They won a charity tournament. That's a cool thing to have for the characters. That they, even though they lost the Wolfbats, they defeated the Wolfbats at a later point and kind of won back their kind of honor and technically won the trophy and stuff like that in a way. There's some cool stuff here. I just wish there was more detail, but for what it is, it's fine. I really do like it. But that's the end of the video. It's been long, but I really wanted to discuss this game. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts were on the story and what your thoughts are on the game overall. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.